The impossible coincidence? That's 100% true. This happened in 1855 and it was so mind blowing. Many newspapers documented this and we still have it on record today if you want to research this. Wow. So back in 1855, a young woman called Mary from London had just recently got married to her husband. And they were newlyweds, they were happy, but they had one problem. They were broke and they needed money. So Mary's husband suggests that he finds work, and the only way he can do that is if he goes to another country and crosses the water. And the way they would travel back then in 1855 was always by ship. So Mary's husband was on this ship, but tragically there was an accident, there was a fire, and the ship actually sank. Now, shortly after Mary's husband's journey, Mary had got back the information, like, I'm sorry to tell you, but the boat your husband was on sunk and everyone on it on board, they passed away. They're dead. So your husband is dead. So this news obviously devastated Mary. She was heartbroken and she was grieving. And she would grieve like this for another 2 years until finally she got word from her husband's auntie that she was sick and she was dying and she was on her last legs, and could she come visit her before she passed away. So Mary decides to do this. She's obviously living in London and her husband's auntie is in the countryside of England. So she actually gets a horse and carriage all the way to this location in England. It's out in the middle of nowhere, the countryside. And she goes on this journey to visit her husband's auntie before she dies. So Mary arrives at the auntie's location and the first thing she does is she wants to see her. She checks in with the auntie and she can see obviously she's in a bad way. She's weeks away from dying. She consoles her and the auntie is able to speak, and the auntie actually asks her a question, I know I'm dying sick here, but how are you? Are you okay? And she's obviously like, I'm okay. But the auntie can see, she's like, look, I know with the loss of my nephew, it's really taking a toll on you. And then obviously Mary kind of breaks down. She's like, look, I'm finding it hard to let go of my husband. I loved him so much. And she's like, I can understand. And she's like, look, thanks for coming up to see me. While you're here, make yourself at home. And that's exactly what Mary does. Mary, goes on walks around the countryside. It's a nice break from her usual, looping thoughts of grief from her husband. And she's starting to find a bit of peace. But that night, she actually has a scary, intense nightmare. So when Mary goes to bed that night, she has a nightmare that will change everything. So Mary has this nightmare where she's in a field, isolated field, and there is a dark shed in front of her. And curiosity gets the better of her. She wants to investigate it. She's in this dream and she goes to this shed. And the closer she gets to this shed, she starts to hear screaming, like a woman screaming. And she's like, oh my God, what the hell is this? So she keeps going further and further until eventually she gets to the shed door and the screams become louder and louder. And she opens the shed door and she sees a skinny old frail woman, and she can't see the face though, but she gets closer to see if the woman is okay. And when the woman finally looks at her, it's the face of her husband. And she's obviously shocked. She has a heart attack almost in a dream. She panics. She wakes up in a sweat then. She's like, oh my God, oh, that was a horrible nightmare. And with this horrible nightmare, she needed to get some air. She was so stressed over that dream. So she gets her jacket on and she decides to go for a walk at midnight in the pitch black. So Mary goes on this walk as she's trying to de-stress from that dream where she's seen her husband's face. She's freaked out. She just needs a bit of air and she'll be fine. So she decides to go on this walk and actually decides to venture outside of her husband's auntie's location and just really take in the countryside and de-stress after what's after happening. Now here's where it gets crazy. So as Mary's on this walk, de-stressing after that crazy dream, she notices a shed eerily similar to the shed that she just had a nightmare about. And she's like, oh my God, that looks like the shed in my dream. And she's like, what? I kind of want to see more. I don't know why, but she felt compelled to go and investigate this shed in real life. And she does, but as she gets closer, she hears groans, and she's like, oh my god, here we go. This was like something out of a dream. But because she was so curious, she decides to investigate it, and she gets closer and closer, and eventually the groans become louder and louder. And as she reaches the door, she takes a deep breath and goes, and she opens the door, and guess who's there? An old, frail woman, just like in her dream, groaning, moaning, making all sorts of sounds. She's in really bad discomfort. And she looks like she is literally on death's door, like she is just moments away from dying. So Mary's obviously panicked, like, oh my god, are you okay, okay? And she's just, she's not saying any words, she's just groaning. And she's like, oh, okay. She can clearly see that she's just about to die. And she kind of half makes a thought to, will I go and run for help? Will I try and get someone to help? But a part of her also realizes that if I leave her and she dies, she's dying alone. Would I just stay with her? So Mary makes a decision to stay with the woman and comfort her in her last moments of life. And the woman can't speak, she can only groan, but she is aware that Mary is there on her last moments of life. And while this is happening, Mary actually notices she has a flask of whiskey in her jacket. So she takes out the whiskey and she offers it to the woman, and the woman actually takes the whiskey. So the two of them are actually there in this last moments of the woman's life. They're drinking whiskey, and it's a surreal moment because Mary's like thinking a million thoughts, like, oh my god, how am I here? Because of this dream, and it's crazy. So anyway, about 20 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden Mary can hear a horse and carriage going by. So she sprints up, flags down the horse and carriage, manages to see someone. I was like, help, help, help. The man jumps off, helps the woman who's basically on the borderline of dying, helps her, and Mary says, we can bring her back to my place I'm staying, which is her husband's auntie's place. So they bring the woman back, and there's a doctor being called, obviously, to try and save this woman's life. But tragically, Mary all of a sudden becomes instantly sick, like completely bedridden sick there and then. And she is like bedbound from that moment on. From that moment, she is literally, she's feeling so nauseous, sick, she can't even move. So she becomes really, really sick, so sick that she's almost in a coma. And this goes on for Mary for a couple of weeks. She's bedridden, she's in and out of a coma, she doesn't know what's going on from that moment on. And then, a couple of weeks later, Mary finally comes out of this coma, and standing over her bed, fine and healthy, is that woman who she saved in that shed. So the woman now looking at Mary is all excited. She can't contain herself. She's like, oh my god, I can't believe you're awake. And Mary's like kind of coming out of this coma, like, what's going on? She's looking at the woman like, oh my god, you're healthy, you're alive. She's like, yeah, I'm alive, thanks to you. And she's like, oh my god, I can't believe you're awake. I can't believe you're safe. I have so much to tell you. And Mary's like, okay, yeah. And the woman is so anxious to talk, but she's aware that Mary's only up out of this coma. She's like, look, I know you're only awake, and this is a lot to take in, but I have been dying to tell you. I'm so anxious. So are you ready for this? And Mary's still obviously like, what is going on? I'm lost. But she's like, yeah, okay, tell me. So the woman is like, okay, so 2 years ago, I was on a ship traveling to a location, and tragically a fire broke out. I didn't know about it. I was asleep, and I was woke up by some heroic man that woke me up, and he woke up many other people and got these people onto a lifeboat. And he was amazing this night. He was like the knight in shining armor for everyone. And he managed to get a few people onto the lifeboat, and the lifeboat took off. But tragically, again, this lifeboat capsized, and many people got washed away with the sea. But me and this heroic man managed to find a desert island where we would stay on this island for 1 year. And this heroic man would go on to take care of me. He would make sure I was fed. He would tell me stories about how he loves his wife. He's only a newlywed. And he was just an amazing man. But unfortunately, halfway through the year, I think everything just got to him, and he became a bit psychotic. He became deranged, and he just wasn't himself. and I kind of kept my distance from him. But we still would speak. But he was lost. But the year mark came around, and luckily enough, a passing ship seen us, and we were rescued. But because of the state of being that he was in, they assumed that he was psychotic, that he was crazy. So they let me go, but they sent him into a mental asylum, which is where he is right now. And Mary's obviously like, "Oh, okay," and she's still dazed, and she's like, and that's where he is right now, today. And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then the woman goes, "So because this man was so amazing to me, I made it my life's business, my life's purpose to track this man's family down. And that man's family is this auntie. And you're his wife." And Mary's like, "What?" She sits up and she's like, "What?" And the old woman's like, "Yeah, your husband saved my life, and your husband is alive." So Mary sits up at this stage. She doesn't give a shit if she's had to be in the coma for a couple of weeks. She is instantly healed. She's excited. She gets up. She hugs the old woman. She's like, "Oh my God, he's alive. My husband's alive." And she's like, "Yeah, and I know where he is. Let's go and get him." So they managed to go, and she was reunited with her husband. Mary got back with her husband. He's alive. All thanks to this old woman. But what we cannot forget is the dream. She dreamt of this woman in a shed with her husband's face on it, right? And it turned out then that woman was a messenger trying to find someone to let them know about all of this, because the woman from that point onwards didn't have much money, but she made it her life's purpose to tell this man who looked after her, who saved her life, to tell this man's family about what has happened, if someone can come back and rescue him, because he's just lost. And she had a message, and she got as far as the shed because she was so malnourished. She'd no money, and she was just about to die, but she managed to find this shed, which was down the road from his auntie's house. And then she had the dream, and somehow Mary found her in the shed. What are the odds? Coincidence? Coincidence? I think not. That's why this story is titled, for me anyway, The Impossible Coincidence. Like, oh my God, how on earth is this even possible? What a story. Wow. And if you want to research this, it's online, public records. Research as much as you can. This actually happened. She actually found her husband alive and well. They reunited. They lived happily ever after. Wow, what a story.